Was it that area also sometimes called the chapel?
Yes.
Okay. And during your time that you were at the academy, did you ever have to report an injury or illness?
Me specifically, no.
Okay. Were you aware of anybody else who had to report an injury or illness?
Yes.
Who?
Dan Maggio, I believe he works for the Rochester Airport Fire Department. He, I think, tore a hamstring or something in the first week, I believe. And some people reported having severe dehydration, but that was during actual exercises.
And do you know the reports of dehydration? Do you know at what week that those occurred in?
I believe first week was Chris Baker. I think he works for Ithaca Fire Department, and Adam Broadfuhr, I believe later on after the fact, while we were doing ladder training. This was probably week 7 or 8.
Do you know if either Mr. Baker or Mr. Can you say that?
Broadfuhr.
Broadfuhr? Do you know how to spell that?
I can do my best. Brodfuerher.
Okay. So
I'm sorry, FR.
F-R... Brodfuerher.
and do you know if either of them had to be transported to the hospital via ambulance?
I believe they were.
Do you know which ambulance transported them?
I don't.
And don't be hesitant to tell us if you don't know something. If you don't know, you don't know. So, going back to Dan Maggio, this week 1 injury, what was the injury that he had to report? You said a torn hamstring, but how did that occur?
It occurred during a TOAC, which we did many of them. It was a grueling workout where you wore your face piece. It was an air consumption drill, getting you used to the duties of being a firefighter. You'd climb through a window. You would pull up a rolled up supply hose line with a rope, and you'd walk upstairs and whatnot. And
That rolled up hose, is that sometimes called a hotel pack?
not specifically, I believe this was just used as a weight.
Okay. Do you know whether any of these 3 individuals, Chris Baker, Dan Maggio, or Adam, and I'm not even trying to pronounce his name again, Adam, do you know whether they were ever returned to the academy after they sustained these injuries?
They did.
Do you know if they missed any of the skills or any of the classroom time because of the injuries?
Whatever was not completed was you returned either on your off time or during your downtime to repeat these tasks or complete them to say that you did.
Was that referred to as a process of remediation?
Yes, sir.
Do you know of anybody else other than these 3 individuals in your class that required remediation to graduate?
I know it was not uncommon. I don't have a name, though.
Okay. We've been told that this event occurred on March 3rd, 2021. Does that comport with your memory?
The 3rd week of the academy, I'm assuming 2nd or 3rd day there.
Do you know whether it was what day of the week it would have been?
I don't. They staggered the schedules.
Okay, that's fine. And it's another one that's kind of obvious. Which building at the academy grounds did this event occur?
At the barn, I believe it was referred to.
Was the barn also ever called the gym?
I don't know if it was referred to as the gym. Generally, when I think of the gym, I imagine where we did PT in the morning. This was not that place.
Okay. So, can we talk logistics about the barn just a little bit? We've been told, a lot of the recruits have referred to what they call the A side as being where there's a large overhead door with a man door next to it. Is that the same building you called the barn?
Yes.
Okay. And they were told that on the B wall of the barn, there was a area where you do ladder drills.
Yes, sir.
And the back wall, or the C wall, would be the back of the inside of the barn,
Yes, sir.
and that the D side of the barn would be that there was a bleachers along the inside of that wall.
There were.
We're also told that under the bleachers there was a hallway and another set of entrance doors.
Yes, that was used specifically for our class, and I believe classes beforehand, as a retrieval of a downed firefighter. They'd clutter the hallway with different things such as a sofa, box spring mattress, exposed walls where you'd have to maneuver through.
Okay. Was this also where, when you were preparing to train inside the barn, that you would don and doff your gear like before and after training?
I didn't ever don and doff my gear through there.
Okay. Okay. Let me go to this. What is the first time that you remember interacting with Peyton Morris at the academy?
When we were split into our companies.
Is there anything that sticks in your memory about that first meeting with Peyton?
That I was much smaller than him.
I'm shifting gears to the night before the incident, which we believe was March 2nd. Do you have any clear start that whole question again. Do you have any clear recollection of having interacted with Peyton Morris that evening?
Specifically that evening, no, but we were expected to almost always, until free time in the evening, you were done with your duties, work as a company.
The chores would be done as a company? Or the house cleaning would be done as a company?
Yes.
So, what you're trying to describe for me is that you probably did interact with them, but you don't have anything that sticks out in your mind that remember?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Let me ask, during that time that evening, at any point before lights out, do you have any recollection of having seen or heard anything that gave you concern for Peyton's health?
No.
It's our understanding that on the morning of March 3rd, it would have been practice for you to first report to for some kind of for the COVID health screening?
Yep, we would be sitting or file in, and someone would have a temperature reader and scan everybody's head. Or later on, I believe we stood in front of a camera that detected our temperature.
Okay. Was that before week 3 or after week 3?
I believe that was after week 3.
And you would describe that each morning there'd be someone who would inquire about your health or injuries during your class time. Was that at PT or was that later in the day?
They'd ask multiple times, but PT, it was asked as well.
And do you specifically remember which instructors at PT would have asked at that question?
Russell Vidler, he was our main PT instructor. I believe her name was Emily Dove, another instructor. Both of them work for Ithaca.
And just to ask them some questions about PT. Do you recall whether throughout the academy was what you did for PT ever adjusted or calibrated based on what you were expected to do the rest of the day, to your knowledge?
Not that we would have been told, but I would imagine as much.
Can you tell me specifically what Russ Vidler would have asked the class, or how he would have asked the class for about how they were feeling?
Russell was very militaristic. Veteran, very. He was one of the instructors that if you had something wrong, you'd talk to him, and he genuinely wanted the best for you. He was very big on teamwork. He would ask if anybody's hurt, raise your hand. When Chris Baker was dehydrated the first week, it was during PET, and this man lifted him up by himself and carried him out. He was very dedicated to his people.
Did Baker actually collapse that he had to be lifted and carried out?
He didn't collapse, but he was on the ground. Dehydration, he curled up, he couldn't stand.
His muscles were cramping?
Yes.
I want to move to the morning of March 3rd, at the PT session. Do you have any clear recollection of Russ Vidler making that same request, of whether there was any injuries or illness that morning?
He started every time that way.
Okay. And do you know whether anybody from your class that morning reported an injury or illness?
No.
Okay. And that would include Peyton?
Yes.
And during the PT session that morning, did you observe anything about Peyton that caused you concern for his health or safety?
Not at that moment.
When you say not at that moment, was there something later that gave you cause for concern?
Yes.
And what was that?
When we were on the B side, I believe, of the barn, we were doing bailouts in a sense, where you go head first down a ladder, swing yourself around, and go out. We were belayed in, we had ropes tied to us. It was a important week, as a lot of our immediate supervisors were there, and there were more people specifically on this week as well, helping out with FAST and mass confidence.
Okay.
While we were doing that, I remember Peyton was pale, profusely sweating. I remember purple rings around his eyes, and he was complaining that he had to physically peel his fingers open because they were so cramped tight, and that he didn't want to look bad and stop. But we, as a company, were very insistent that I went and saw our lead instructor.
Do you know if he in fact did go see the lead instructor?
He told us he did.
Do you know who the lead instructor was?
Heber? I don't know his first name, but
Okay. That's fine. Do you know at what point in the day Peyton... Let me ask you this. At what point in the day did Peyton tell you that he had gone to Heber?
I believe during lunch.
Do you know at what point in the day Peyton had actually gone to Heber?
Sometime when we had downtime in between those two.
Okay. Between the latter bailouts and then... Was it at the end of lunchtime or the beginning of lunchtime he told you to talk to Heber?
During?
Okay, during. So, during lunch?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Were you seated next to near him?
We all sat in large groups, but like anything, you stayed near your company.
Okay. And did you ever personally observe him talking to Heber?
Me personally, no.
Okay. Do you know of anybody who did observe him talk directly to Heber?
Not that I know of.
Okay. So let's go back to that morning at the window bailouts. Peyton tells you this. Did you remember saying anything back to him about what he had just told you?
He needs to go and talk to someone about it.
And other than him telling you that he did, do you have any knowledge that he actually did tell somebody?
No.
Okay. Do you know if there was anybody else around when he had this conversation with you about his fingers and his hands?
The rest of my company was there. I imagine there was at least another company or two there. And some instructors,
Okay.
some people from their own individual departments. There were people from all over the state.
Okay. I understand there may be a lot of people around, but were they participating in this conversation with the two of you?
No, it was very much just a company conversation.
So, but just the four of you in the company?
Yes.
Okay. Do you know if any supervisors from Peyton's home department were there that morning?
I don't, but I wouldn't be surprised. Their chief made a appearance after the fact, so
Okay. Okay. Do you know if there were any SFIs who were specifically a part of the conversation you just described about his hands cramping?
I know there were some nearby. I don't think they were a part of the conversation, though.
Do you have any idea what those SFIs were doing while this conversation was going on?
Inspecting the ropes, looking at the ladders, setting up for when it was our turn to go. There were other companies there, so while we had a break to kind of get ourselves reorganized and whatnot, they were probably looking at the other groups, ensuring they didn't hurt themselves.
Okay. This conversation, was it had in the vicinity of where the training was going on, or had you stepped back from where the training area to be out of the way?
We were in the room that the bailouts were happening in.
Okay.
Could it have been overheard? Yes,
But you don't know if it was?
but I don't know if it was.
We started with PT, and I want to go back, just go a step with it. Did you see anything of concern to you during the breakfast that morning that gave you a cause for concern for Peyton's health?
Not specifically.
Okay.
Um,
Generally, did you see something that was concerning to you?
Everybody was sweaty, and that was expected. We got run pretty hard in PT, but I imagine being that these were important days, we sometimes did yoga, we sometimes did mindfulness.
Do you remember specifically what that morning's exercises were?
I do not.
Do you know whether, were you ever told by Russ Vidler that he would take into account what you were doing later in the day when he organized the PT that morning?
I know I heard him say it. I don't know if I heard him say it that day. But
Okay.
if he's the type of person where if he meant it one day, he means it
Okay.
all of them.
Okay. We understood that after breakfast there'd be a flag ceremony?
Yes, we'd raise the flag.
Okay. And it's our understanding also that at that point is when you'd be given sort of your itinerary or what you're going to be doing that day.
Yep.
Did you see anything that caused you any concern about Peyton's health or safety at the flag ceremony that day?
Not that I noticed.
Okay. And then I believe you said in that morning's training you were doing ladder bailouts?
Yes, sir.
And that's when you did see something that caused you concern?
Yes.
Well, let me ask you this. You said that he told you. Did you observe anything about him physically that, okay, also, in addition to what he said, gave you concern?
Yeah, he was having trouble taking his gloves off, and when he did, his hands were clamped shut, and we saw him physically have to wrench his hands open. I'm assuming they were clamped shut from him grabbing to a rope or a ladder or something.
I want to shift a little bit. When you were doing these drills, and actually I'm probably going to, no, I'll wait this later. Just- Did you, other than the ladder bailouts, did you do any other skills or practice that morning?
I know we did. I just couldn't tell you specifically what it was.